Okay, welcome to one and all. Those who are in person, those who are live, and those who are on Zoom. So I really appreciate everyone joining us today. We are starting a new course. We love these courses, and this is a fascinating one of my favorites. It's got a long mouthful name called Captivating Cases of Rabbinic Responsa. I have a new name for it. Those who got my emails know the name. What is the name? For the Ages from the Sages. And very excited about this. First of all, I want to say that tonight's dinner, Alex's grandmother's yard site, Razel Bashmuel. Tonight's class is an honor dedicated, sponsored for her yard site, as well as yesterday is the 10th of Shvat, Yud Shvat, and it is a very special day in the Chabad calendar, Jewry, World Jewry. It is the day that the Rebbe's father-in-law passed away. It was his yard site, the 10th of Shvat, and also the day that in 1951, the Rebbe assumed the leadership of Chabad, and the reason why we're here today is due to that. So that's a big excitement and sponsorship.
Today is also the author of
Also, we'd like to make a big thank you.
that's time.
There we go.
Was shown,
Very good. A special day. Fred makes these courses much more exciting. We have these courses are CLE accredited, and we have co-presenting Fred Altman. It always adds a lot. So without further ado, we're going to begin our course. And of course, we start with a joke. There was a Jew named Moshe who had a deli in New York City. And anyhow, one day the IRS shows up and starts going through his stuff. And he says, listen, we have a very small business here. There's nothing to look through. What are you guys going to make me sugar for? And they say, your income looks perfectly fine. But we've seen your expenses, like these 10 trips to Israel. How do you manage that? He says, didn't I tell you? We also deliver. All right. They say what are the difference between taxes and death?
Can't avoid them.
Well, you can't avoid them, but there is a difference that not every year does the government get together to make death worse. But in terms of this class, we have one more joke. That's actually a good joke. This is actually a good joke. There was a fellow who shows up to shul with his dog, and the security in front of the shul says, unless it's a service dog, you need a special reason to bring your dog into shul. He says, well, this dog's a very religious dog. He davens, and the guy looks at him, he says, before I let you in, you got to show me. Does he really daven? The guy pulls out a small babysitter and he puts it in front of the dog. The dog starts swaying back and forth, back and forth. It's the real thing. So this guard says, you should send this dog to Hollywood. The guy says, you tell him that. He wants to become a doctor. All right. So what is this course about? In short, we're going to pull up our sharing screen in a moment. Those who are online that do not have, or watching recording, do not have your books yet, we have books for you here. But we will share parts of it on the screen because the first class we give for open to everyone, and we have a PDF just for the first class. So what we're going to do is really get to see a very unique genre, a unique part of Jewish Torah thought, but specifically to really show, and you'll see in today's class specifically, to see how it represents the unique relationship that Jews have with God. It's quite interesting. There's a lot of history in it. It's going to be fascinating. There's also lots of elements that are like kind of little cherries on top. But if you would say this, as Fred will say later, this is more what's called case law than law. So we're going to learn how Jews throughout the ages, it's almost going to be like a conversation with your grandparents. You wanted to know your great-great-grandparents, you have no information about them. This genre of Torah gives us a little bit of a appreciation for that. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. I hope everyone can see. Maybe we'll shut some of the lights here. Here we go. I'm actually going to share my screen this way, only because it'll make me allow stuff to do other things in a minute. Okay, good. So I think everyone sees what I see. We're going to begin our slideshow. Today, as we begin the 6-week journey, is called Dispatches of Devotion, How Responsa Reveal Unshakable Jewish Loyalty. So, we are going to get to see a little bit of how actual situations came up throughout history in different situations. Today is going to be probably one of the much more dramatic days. Different difficult situations, you're going to get to have a unique perspective in how Jews dealt with very difficult times. I'm going to tell you something quite interesting. What's unique about history through the lens of Jewish responses, when someone's writing history, very often they have a certain bias, and that's how they portray the history. But if someone's not trying to tell history, right, then they have actually a unique element of being pure to what actually happened. So that is going to be something unique to the pure window into different situations the Jewish community faced. Some of it is very new to me. I'm actually curious for maybe Fred will touch on it later. A witness that is not officially testifying, but through them just chatting with someone else. In Jewish law, that would be called Masiach Lefitumai, has a greater trustworthiness to the testimony of someone than someone that got up at the witness stand and is trying to say something for the case. He's more in it than versus just pure someone schmoozing at a table. Okay? So our first case is going to be something that takes us back to Spain. And it's quite a strange situation. It has to do with taxes. That was hence one of my jokes. The Jews of Spain were a very wealthy community. This story takes us back to the year 1300 approximately. And the rabbi of our story is Rabbi Shlomo Ben Adaris, very famous responsa. I don't have one here, but I brought some props. We have different responses to the ages, different rabbis. But maybe I'll share with them some of you soon. But what's fascinating about this first discussion is you will learn a lot about how Jews in Spain, even in the golden age of Spain, before the expulsion, how much they suffered. So we're going to tell you in short what goes on. There are two individuals that did some type of service for the Spanish crown, and they are rewarded with a tax exemption. Two Jewish wealthy people. You got to remember, two wealthy people. And the way that Jews were taxed, as you can see on the screen, maybe we'll turn off some of the light here. Can everyone see what it says on the screen? Is it clear? What do you guys say? I'll move it up a teeny bit. They were taxed as a unit. So the government said Jews have to pay X amount of money, and then the Jews themselves had to divvy up the money. It wasn't dependent if you're a poor Jew or a rich Jew. Obviously, the community there were no individuals. That's already a thing. They were not citizens of each individual that lived in Spain as Jews, but they were a community. And some records tell us there was quite close to 22% of taxes were on the Jewish quota. It's a very large percentage of taxes. And I have two wealthy Jews that are exempt from taxes. So even though those two guys are exempt personally, but now it falls on the other Jews to pay the rest of the money.
Can you remind me the reason they were exempt was?
I'm not certain, but it was a service they provided for the king. So here comes what comes very interesting.
As a doctor, or
That is another story that's connected with this that Roger was involved with, but it's not the story. Here comes the story unfolds further, is that there were various things that the king would take somewhat of a bribe to make it life easier for the Jews. Believe it or not, you are familiar, you see on the screen, the yellow star, Holocaust. This week was Holocaust Memorial Day. Believe it or not, in Spain, Jews had to wear some type of badge. And so it was very humiliating for the Jews. So they went to the government and they said, what can we do to get rid of this? Well, if you have a certain amount of money, we'll make it smaller. Okay? And the Jewish community was ready to do that. They put up this funds, and these two wealthy Jews who are exempt from taxes say, we're exempt from taxes from the king. The Jewish community turns to them, wait, this has nothing to do with the general taxes. This is a Jewish tax. You have to wear the badge. You're benefiting from it. You should also have to pay the tax.
But it wasn't taxes, it's like a.
So the Jewish community within themselves made a tax that all the Jews had to contribute to a general fund to fight off this badge. In addition, there was other issues that came up. For example, Jews had to hire security for themselves. And so they made a collect fund between all the Jews. Let us bring funds together for security, something that we all can relate to today. And these Jews kept on saying, there are these wealthy Jews, and they kept on saying, we are exempt from taxes. You get the gist. What's interesting is you're learning a lot of history about the situation of Spanish Jewry in the year 1300. This is even before the expulsion of Spain. Life wasn't easy for the Jews. And this is called the golden era of Jewish life in Spain. You're realizing a little bit of the history of what's going on. So the rabbi who issues a verdict on this, text 1, we're going to read, is on page 3, open your books, is Rabbi Shlomo ben Aderet, who is the rabbi in Barcelona, Spain, and passes in the year 1310, so this is close to the end of his life. Are Reuben and Shimon, those are the names we're giving to this guy, obligated to contribute to the community taxes? Let us join, and we need someone that reads nice and loud. We're going to start with, we'll start with Fred. We'll honor him as he's our co-presenter to read Scope of Tax Exemption. Take it away, Fred.
Reuben and Shimon were exempted from all taxes and all levies by a royal decree bearing the king's seal. Later, the community incurred significant expenses for communal needs and protection. This included paying bribes for safety during the Christian holiday and funding municipal improvements. He also spent heavily lobbying against large badges that the king decreed all Jews must wear, successfully reducing the size of the badges by half and securing an exemption when wearing a cape. Additionally, the king had decreed that Jewish creditors must forfeit the entire loan if a non-Jewish witness testified that they charged interest above the legal rate. The community successfully lobbied to change this, limiting the penalty to forfeiting only the excess interest.
Did skip that whole interest thing. It's very elaborate. For today's discussion, we don't need to know all the details, but there was a whole thing with interest. Keep going.
The community contends that the king's exemption applies only to taxes and levies, not to expenses incurred for their benefit and protection or municipal improvement. Reuben and Shimon claim that their exemption should apply to all of these expenses. As evidence, they invoke the fact that they were never previously added tribute to similar expenses. They acknowledge deriving protection and benefit from the community's expenditures, but claim that this itself does not obligate them to contribute. Who is right?
So this is the question that the Rabbi Shlomo ben Aderet, writes in his Responsa, which is quoting both the question and then him giving his own response. I want to tell you something remarkable. The first Jewish books on the printing press were printed in which country? Italy, in Rome. One of the first of 9 Jewish books that were printed ever on a printing press was the response of this rabbi, because this took on such an importance. So like one of the 9 is the commentary of Rashi on the Torah. That is a classic. But one of them, of the 9 books printed in Rome on the printing press, the first Jewish books was, believe it or not, this rabbi's answers and questions. So we're going to look at the Hebrew way to say this. It's called Sha'alot Utshuvot. All the books on the table here are throughout the centuries, different rabbis, the questions they got and the answers. Sometimes the questions are even more interesting than the answers, because like this question tells you all about Jews wearing badges in Spain. Where do you think the Nazis got these ideas from? This wasn't new. Fascinating to me, at least. And again, this is the question. So, Whether or not you love the question, you think these guys are idiots, you have your opinion about it, the Rashba wouldn't just say, oh, in this situation, he wrote the whole story. Now we have a lens into history from that. So this is the written responses to halakha questions. I'm going to ask everyone a little question here. Jewish law is translated in Hebrew as halakha. Does anybody know what the word halakha really means? Holech. What does that mean? It's not a direct translation of the word law. Halakha means the way to go. And that is because the way that Jews have always seen the Torah is not only as an old document, a heritage, a family legacy, but it is what guides us every day, in every era, and every time. So the Torah isn't a story of the past, but it directs us and has principles, even though it was given over 3,000 years ago. We believe it's divine and it's a message for all time. So Jews, in all situations, turned to the Torah. Now, I wanted to say this very briefly. These two guys, Reuben and Shimon, I think everyone in this room probably has something against them at this point. But, remarkably, they're willing to listen to the rabbi's opinion of the Torah. He's going to settle the dispute. Quite interesting. Now, you would say, what ends up happening? So I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler for this first week. We will hopefully get a chance to look at the resolutions. On page 32, at the end of your first lesson, on page 32, you will see we're going to tackle a total of 30 questions throughout this course. We'll show you about them shortly. And we're going to focus on different elements that come to this genre of responsa, but you can look yourself and read the whole answer of the Rabbi Shlomo ben Aderes, page 32 and onwards, in all the cases. Today's class is unique in trying to emphasize not only what the answer is, but what the questions can tell us about Jewish life. It tells you two things. It tells you a little of the history of what's going on, may not be known to many, at least to myself. I'm learning a lot about Judaism before the expulsion. It was not easy. The expulsion was 1492. This is the year 1300. In addition, it also tells you that even though these guys didn't seem like they're like the no goodniks, but they're ready to listen to the rabbi. Fascinating to me. Okay, just for a guess on this question, do you think the rabbi accepted which of the sides, the community or these two wealthy individuals?
I'm guessing community.
Well, I think we'd all guess that based on basic morality, but he doesn't just take it like, well, these guys are crooks, they should be giving money. He has to base it on Torah law. So that's what's interesting. They may be, ethically wrong, but legally, did they do anything wrong? They're benefiting from something that they're not paying for, basically. That's really the discussion. And they had their own Talmudic verses to quote. Okay, so correct. In this situation, we're going to give you the short answer, but you can look up as your optional homework, page 32. Just to give you a little broad scope of this, the amount of halachic questions and answers called responsa, halachic Jewish Torah law of responsa, or in Hebrew, shalos or tshuvos. I may sometimes use the word shoot. That's an acronym for it. It doesn't mean the English word like shoot, like you stub your toe, but it shoot means these books, they're called shoot. Roughly are over 650,000 halachic answers to questions that are still with us today. Obviously, many more have been lost throughout the centuries. So here we go. What are the key elements that we gain from seeing this part of Jewish law? Number one, as you see on the screen, it gives you a glimpse into how Jewish law is crafted. It gives you a glimpse into Jewish history. And this is really, I think the key is this little bottom piece here. It shows us Judaism in action, revealing Torah is the heartbeat of everyday Jewish life. So we're going for 6 weeks. So here comes the 6 lessons. Number one is today's dispatches of devotion. We're going to learn about Jews being devoted to Torah, even in difficult circumstances. Lesson 2, Torah in the trenches. Fascinating. 3, precedent in practice. 4, counterweights considered. What else can we consider in Jewish law? Number 5 is probably my favorite. The 5th factor. It's called the 5th Chelik of Shulchan Aruch. We'll get to see that then. And finally, forging forward, talking about real new questions that will be coming up in the age of AI, in space travel. How do you keep Shabbat? How do you track Shabbat if you're in outer space? These things are being dealt with not only in the future, but are actually being dealt with today. So, without further ado, I'm going to go through these slides a little bit quickly. First, join me on page 5, figure 1.1. We're going to read these together. These are different genres of Torah study. We'll read them together. Join me. I'm not going to read through the whole definition, but you just get an idea. So, number 1, scripture. 2, Talmud. If you can join me, please. 3, Midrash. 4, Kabbalah. That was actually our last course. 5, Halacha. Now, you would assume that this is what we're studying today. We are not studying today just the code of Jewish law. That Mishnayos could be part of the Talmud. Good question.
Because did your wife tell you that Chaya Bracha's son is doing Mishnayos Sukkah?
Good. So my daughter and other kids in our school do learn Mishnah and Talmud.
This is
Number-
that moved away.
Number 4, we said halacha. I'm sorry, I'm on 5. Now, this next one is what we're learning today, Shalot Utshuvot, the Responsa literature. It's very important to recognize that if we were learning halacha, it would just be the laws in the Code of Jewish Law. We're not learning the laws of the Code of Jewish Law. We're learning actual case law. We're learning what happens in communities and how they look for Torah for guidance. There's a difference. Following that, Chakira is Jewish philosophy, Chassidut, Musar, Dikduk, Jewish grammar, history, and liturgy. And what's unique about Shalot Utshuvot is sometimes you have really a combination of all these different genres of Torah study. We've touched on many of them in different courses, but really sometimes in response you have pretty much everything all together. So it's a unique group of Torah study. So let us read a little bit text 2 while someone online. Sarah, if you can read text 2, unmute yourself. It is about significance of history and Torah study within Responsa, page 6.
You're not going to be able to see me now because my camera keeps
You're
going.
good. We can hear you. Text
What am I reading?
Page 6, text 2.
Unintended historical records. A special importance attaches to Responsa as a primary source for knowledge of the history of the Jews in the various countries. Responsa literature has one advantage over such other accepted historical sources as chronographies, official documents, biographies, etc., since the evidence it affords is undesigned without any specific historical purpose or intention. Moreover, while in general, the accepted sources preserve only important events, the Responsa echo the humdrum daily life of the ordinary person, his folk ways, beliefs, dialects, and of particular importance, details about the lives of villagers and townsmen whose identity is completely blurred in the usual sources. Since the beginning of modern Jewish historiography, the Responsa literature has been drawn upon for this purpose.
Okay, great. So right now, we're going to do this on our own. So we know, we kind of mentioned this before, what's unique to the history without a history book. When you're learning within something else, if you have a pen with you, there are pens in the front. Please join me on page 7, exercise. What historical realities can be gleaned from the story in text 1 about Jewish life in Spain? I'm going to give everyone a second to fill that in. Your books are yours to keep. You can write them in. Alex, if you want your own book, here's a book.
Actually,
There you go.
no.
You're good.
I might go into the other room. I have some.
So number 1, anybody can share with me something that they learned. I'm going to just put out one that I learned is even Jews that you would think were a little mean would still listen to the rabbis. The rabbis had major authority. Okay. Anything else? Tracy, do you have any ideas what you wrote down? Not a problem.
I was writing down what you said.
Okay, good. Roger, what are you writing down? Tell us what you think you're learning about.
As in every study, there's the elites versus the masses.
Good. There's elites. There's the masses. High taxing of the Jewish community. and that Jews were not citizens, even if they were welcome to live there. They were not looked at as individuals, they looked at as a group. It would be, so once you're in this group, that's straight up racism, by the way, right? We're telling you that you can be whatever, but you're in this group, you're part of the group. We don't even look at you as an individual. It's irrelevant in what you do. If you're a poor person or rich, it's irrelevant. You get all taxed the same. Rabbis figure it out with your community. You divvy up, and you might just show up with a certain amount of taxes. Very interesting. Does anybody else want to add something before we continue? So, now that we have that, I want you to join me on page 8. I'm actually going to share it on the screen for those who don't have the book. I think it's really worth it to see this. The map. There we go. So I think some of you have already seen this, but here we go. This map is remarkable. On the page 8 and 9, you're going to have a map of the world and 30 responsa that we will talk about in different places in the world. I'm just gonna, one that you guys know I studied in England in Manchester. So let's look at Manchester, 1963. Manchester, may tefillin be brought into a hospital, the Jewish guy in a hospital. He wants to wrap tefillin, but if they will be later incinerated, can you bring in tefillin? That's going to be one of my favorite questions, by the way. You'll see why. And you see after Manchester as a 5, it means we will be discussing that in lesson 5. That's one question. Look at Barcelona. There's 3 of them. Join me on Barcelona the 2nd. Can an astrolabe be used on Shabbat? What do you guys think?
What is that?
I don't know
That
what
would
it
be
is,
the
so
first part of knowing what is an astrolabe. Good. We will learn that in further classes. Lesson 3, right? It's got a 3 next to it. The one right under that is a very interesting. These are all 1300. This is all by the Rabbi Shlomo ben Adaris that we cited before from Barcelona. Should donors be recognized in plaques in synagogues? Do we honor people if they give money? They're giving tzedakah. Maybe that's enough of a mitzvah. Is it a good thing? Is it not a good thing? You may know the answers to that, but we're going to discuss it. It's quite interesting. So that is page 8 and 9. I should have gone back to that, but anyhow, those are looking at that. But I will continue now and telling you what's going on page 10 and 11. The pages look a little busy and they can be a little frightening to look at. There's another 50 questions. These questions we're not necessarily going to touch if we don't have enough time. They're a little bit subcases, but these, you have this in your book. It's a remarkable thing just to read this. I could give a million more examples, but here's one example. I'm going to go from page 10. Look at New York, 1978. You guys have that on page 10? Second one, can an EMT volunteers, there's many Jewish communities have what's called Hatzalah, which is basically EMTs, volunteer ambulance service. So they're allowed to save one's life, though certainly they can drive the patient to the hospital, even if it's Shabbat. My wife had a baby. We went to Shabbat. It was one of them was on Shabbat. We went to the hospital if it's a dangerous health concern. But what about them driving back on Shabbat after saving a life? Or like once they drop the patient off, they can't drive home. Okay, I'm just giving you some examples. If I would spend time reading this with you, it'd be very interesting. We don't have time for that. But guess what? We have 6 weeks. You'll get to the first 8, page 8 and 9, you will get to all of them. And page 10 and 11. Okay, we'll hear from Alex. This is your last little thought. What's your answer to this?
That potentially they're picking up another patient.
I love it. Very good. Well, if you don't have your ambulance, if the ambulance are parked at the hospital, then you may not be able to save someone else's life. I love it. Great answer. Well, we're going to learn that and more because there's actually more to the story, but that's already on the right track. Okay, good. I like that, Alex. Okay, so these pages can be, for some people, dizzy. And I invite you, in the next few weeks, you have the book to look at some of them. We may not cover all the next 50 cases that are on page 10 and 11. Okay. I'm going to, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to probably use the screen instead of with a slideshow with this because some people don't have their books yet. And I think it's easier just to base it off the PDF. we're learning this whole concept of Jewish life in different eras and learning the history of the Jews and how, even in very, as you're going to see, dire circumstances, they always look to guidance in the Torah. And for some of us, it may sound foolish, like, really? You're worried about this? You're running for your life? You're in Auschwitz? You really care about this? I think it's important to give framework to that. And the main element is to realize, if you're on your screen and you can't see, and you're on your phone, you're going to swipe over, you'll probably get to see the screen I'm sharing, is that this really shows that, above all else, Jews throughout the ages knew that their survival and their magic, and why we're here today, is because of relationship with God. And it was like a love affair with the Torah. What can I tell you? That even in the crazy circumstances, they wanted to know, what does the Torah tell me to do in this situation? Even though you could tell me, well, these situations are so dire, throw the Torah out the window now, just try to survive. But Jews, and that's really what's going to be said, this dispatches of devotion. This really emphasizes the way that Jews want to have a relationship with God. And we're just going to read very quickly text 3. I'm going to read it, page 13. This is from the Hayom Yom book of the Rebbe and the Rebbe's father-in-law. And I think it's appropriate. Yesterday was the 10th of Shvat and a special day. So, the word mitzvah. How do you translate the word mitzvah? Many people will say good deed. It's roughly, for some mitzvahs maybe, helping someone, your neighbor, shoveling the walkway for somebody, that is a good deed. But the real element of mitzvah is related to the Aramaic word tzavta, which means connection. One who performs a mitzvah connects with God, the issuer of the commandment. This is the meaning of the Mishnaic phrase, the reward of a mitzvah is the mitzvah. The reward of the mitzvah is the connection it generates with God, who issues the commandments. So people that are asking these questions want a relationship with Hashem. They know that this is what really keeps us as a Jewish people. We've had different things throughout the ages, like every other nation. But what's unique to the Jewish people is a relationship with Hashem. And there are certain cases that are straight up in the Torah. But then there comes unique situations in future generations. And text 4 is where Moses tells the Jewish people, if you have a question of what the Torah means in this situation, in this future era, what will you do? And this is straight out of the book Deuteronomy, text 4. When Honor Roger, you read this text from Moses.
Text 4.
Correct.
Now my gloves, I can't, there. If a matter eludes you in a case involving capital punishment, litigation, leprous marks, or a case where there's a dispute in your cities, you shall set out and go up to the place that God shall choose. You shall come to the Levitical priests and to the judge who will be in those days, and you shall inquire, and they will tell you the words of judgment. You shall do according to the words they tell you from the place God will choose, and you shall carefully do according to all they instruct you.
So the short version is Jews will have questions how to act. Go to, in temple times, Moses is saying you should go to the high court in Jerusalem. That would be the best option. Obviously, once the destruction of the temple and Jews are dispersed around the world, it basically means go to the judges of your times, go to the rabbis and get information of how the Torah would instruct us in different situations. So now that we have that background, we're now ready for our next story. We're going to go to 3 cases that are posed to rabbis, each in times of hardship. There's a history to each one. And I think the key we're going to learn is what the responses the rabbis give in each case. Again, at the end of the section, hopefully we'll have time for that. But if we don't, what we're highlighting is the fact that Jews in such situations were asking these types of questions. So following, by the way, a presentation, before we have time to do extra, we're going to make sure that Fred, who has prepared some interesting remarks of how American law talks about concepts that we are discussing today, because that is always a treat to have, and it's accredited for the state.
I was just going to ask, right before you said that, I was going to ask you, could this be the Responsa process? Could it be compared to
Great.
other, and you just said American law.
Right. So we're going to see that from Fred. Fred's going to share with us a little bit about that.
Okay.
What do you say? The question is, how does American law, look at responsa and case law, basically. Okay.
Yes.
You'll get to that at the right time. We'll have remarks from Fred at the end. Okay. So that is what we're going to do. We're going to go 3 different countries, different eras. You ready for our first trip? We're going to North Africa, Algeria. Nowadays, in most North African countries, probably besides Morocco, there are no Jewish communities. But you have to realize when the expulsion of Spain, many, many Jews went to North Africa. And Jews have been in North Africa even prior to that. So Algiers is a city within Algeria. The year is 1732 in March. Will become our first case. Look at this little map. You can look in your page 16 for the same map. In Spain, the southeastern coast, there is a buildup of armies, militias, and the Jews who live in Algeria are worried. Algeria then is owned by Muslim countries who allow Jews to live as Jews, and the Christians in Spain are pulling up a big military massment. The Jews of Algiers are worried if they come here, not only will there be bloodshed and war, and of course the minorities will be first to be killed, amongst them the Jews, but also if the Christians take over, then we will be forcibly converted to Christianity. So the Jews in Algiers, you see the northern tip of, right? That if you're looking in your book, it's the red little thing, Algiers. The Jews say we got to run out of town. We're going to go to the hilltops. We're going to go to the forest. We're going to go to, no one will find us. Now, between me and you, actually, the Spanish armies did not actually come to Algiers. They went to another city in Algeria. If you see Oran, that was where they ended up going. But the Jews flee the city and they take shelter in anything they can get. And many of them are staying in these bathhouses, abandoned homes, outhouses, just a place temporarily to stick around. And their question is, we'll see text 5, is written to a rabbi of their time, Rabbi Yehuda Asya, and the question will be, is about prayer. I actually mentioned this on Shabbat, in my sermon, that Jews, we love praying, and you can pray wherever you are. You can pray to God in an island, you can pray to God on a spaceship, in a plane, wherever you are. There's no one place that God is everywhere. However, we do know that in a bathroom, it's not proper to pray, or in a bathhouse. So let's say there's even something called a mikvah, a Jewish ritual bath. Even in that room, even if it's not a bathroom per se, it's a room of bathing. We do not pray in that room. And it's the one room that you don't have a mezuzah on in a home. So they're concerned about their homes. A lot of them live in abandoned bathhouses or wherever they could find shelter. So let's read text 5 about the Jewish community. You'll get to see how, again, history, whoever would write the history, if the Spanish wrote the history, would write it one way. If North African, Algeria would write the history, they would write it their own way. But you're hearing the story just as the rabbi wrote it down in his book. Tracy.
Can I ask a question before you have somebody read?
Yes.
Do these responses come from any discussions that happened in the Gemara? Or is it
So
just
you're on the ball. The responses, we're learning today, we're going to have 6 weeks to talk about different elements of responses. Today we're mostly focusing on the question. If you will use the back of the book, your optional homework, you will see that they have to glean from the Gemara how to answer these situations.
okay?
Good question.
Okay.
Okay. Marilyn, we'd like to read? You have to unmute yourself. We'll get back to you in a minute. You have to unmute yourself if you want to read. Everyone that cannot hear, if you're in person, you just read along your own.
I don't think she knows how to unmute
Okay.
herself.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out
Up
eventually.
in the corner, Marilyn, there's a little blue thing. Just click it.
Don't worry. Tracy, you're going to read this? We're going to get it ready for the next time.
That's the bathhouse.
Correct. 5.
Year 5,492 from creation, 1732. There was great turmoil due to dire rumors. Many claimed that the King of Spain planned to wage war against our city, Algiers. with a vast army and overwhelming force, equipped with countless deadly weapons. Because of this, the members of our community sadly suffered tremendous financial loss, having to rent fields and orchards outside the city, safeguard their property and lives. Additionally, they incurred expenses on horses and carriages to transport themselves back and forth. Amid this upheaval, some individuals came to inquire whether it was permissible to pray in the bathhouses located in the fields. Due to the great demand, even horse stables and bathhouses have been rented out for lodging, with 2 or 3 families sharing a single room. Their question was as follows: do we say that since the bathhouse has been washed and replastered and no bathing occurs there during their stay, it is equivalent to an ordinary clean house? Or do we say that once a bathhouse is rejected for prayer, it forever remains disqualified?
Thank you. So before we get to discuss again the situation, there's not a major makeover. It's not a full demolition or rebuilding. It's basically a bathhouse. If they leave, people may reuse it as a bathhouse. It's not currently being used as a bathhouse. What do you say? So before we get to your opinion about it, let's look at the question on the bottom of the page. What does this question reveal about the mindset of those who posed it? You hear the story. These guys are running for their lives. There's a lot of financial loss, so that means a lot of anxiety and stress. What will be? And yet, what is on their minds? How can we pray properly to Hashem? This is a story like, oh, who cares? Just pray anyway. Well, they want to do it the way that God said so. So it's interesting to see. Tells you that when I'm reading these stories, I'm getting the feeling how proud we can be of who we are as a people. The Jews never sunk to the lowest. We always held high level of morality, no matter the situation, and I would say even divine relationship with Hashem. Okay, and if you want to have the full version of the answer, again, resolutions of all these questions are at the end of the book. At the end of this lesson on page 32 onwards. So you can read it there. What ends up being the ruling of the rabbi? Even though everyone wants to tell me, oh, please tell me the answer, you have it in your book. Today we're really focusing on just the questions. Tell you so much about who we are as a people, how proud we should be of ourselves. I'm going to tell you a little story that is reminiscent of this. My father will remember. Take us back to Soviet Union, 1968. The Rebbe got a letter from an individual who was marriageable age in Russia. And he had a lot on his mind. He was a practicing Jew. It was dangerous to live there. And he writes a letter to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe marvels publicly at, wow, look what this person is discussing. What is he worried about? Okay, so I'm just going to read a quick translation of the Rebbe's words. The Rebbe spoke on Simchas Torah 1968. There is a young man in the Soviet Union of marriageable age who sent me a letter, a dangerous act in itself. That itself is important. If this letter gets, seen by the government, it's not always like, oh, they're sitting next to the rabbi in shul. You'll see in the next cases specifically, they're sending a letter out of town. So sending a religious letter itself was dangerous for this young man. What did he ask for? He didn't ask for a blessing to be able to emigrate, thinking himself unworthy of such a miracle, though in truth he is worthy, and maybe God's will that he will leave there soon. In fact, the Rebbe gave this kind of blessing. The fellow did leave the Soviet Union. Nor did he complain about the immense challenges he faces, though in truth these challenges are legitimately a question. Why must he endure them? Yet, he's not concerned with these questions, not because he has an answer, but because simply does not have the question. The only thing that truly was troubling and disturbing him, as he wrote in this letter, is the need for advice on an overcoming improper thoughts during his prayer, as they prevent him from fully fulfilling the mitzvah of standing before God and focusing on the meaning of the words. This he feels affects his mission in life. It weighs on him so heavily that he is willing to risk sending a letter to seek an answer. This type of Jew, says the Rebbe, the entire world exists for him. And yet he neither knows this or even cares about his own greatness. I'm going to stop right there. Todd, do you remember the story? My father even knows who the individual was. He came and he's alive today. Maybe if you come with us to Crown Heights one day, we'll go into a store. He has a store right next to 770. He sells all types of Judaica. This Russian man. Anyhow, back to our story. We are going out of Algiers and going back to Spain. It seems like Spain gets a lot of. You see this map? That's a lot of dots. These are many locations of forced conversions in Spain via 1391. So again, giving you perspective. Although the expulsion of Spain is in 1492, there's many forced conversions much earlier, and there are many converso Jews. As you see, Spain is actually not only one kingdom. There's different kingdoms within Spain. There's Granada. There's Aragon, and here you have other parts of Spain, and you see Aragon and those areas in the eastern part are heavily with forced conversions. The church is extremely strong there. So here comes the question. This question was posed to another rabbi who lives a little later, and as you'll see, he was born in Algiers. He's not even in Spain, because at this time there were no active rabbis in Spain. When this question is actually posed, is after 1391, and the Jews in Spain have the following question. Basically, you may have heard of crypto Jews. We don't call them Marranos anymore. Marranos actually is a word for a pig, kind of talking how these Jews who were forced and converted, so outwardly they acted as Christians, but quietly they made their own Jewish life. And this is a very interesting question in general about the status of the Marranos, and there's more to it. But here, you're going to see it's Passover time. They can't give away that they're Jewish, or else they'll be persecuted by the church, by the inquisitions of the time. So they can't, if they will never eat bread on Passover and only eat matzah, they're clearly Jewish. They give away their cover. So they turn to Rabbi Shlomo Duran, as you'll see in text 6, with trying to make a deal, and maybe they can't do a full Passover, but they want to do some of Passover. What's very remarkable in this is that you see it's not all about all or nothing in Judaism. All or nothing in Judaism, many times people, well, I don't do it anyway. I'm not I can't do any of it. These Jews said, maybe we're not going to be able to eat matzah publicly. Maybe or even, it would be too suspicious even if they did it privately. But we'll do some of Passover. Let us find something. So you would say, oh, eat rice. That's not chametz. It's a grain. They're going to say to themselves that eating rice would be clearly indicative that they're Jewish, because they're Spanish Jews, Sephardic. Everyone eats rice in Passover. Oh, their neighbors say, hey, this guy's Jewish. He's only eating rice this Passover, ready for 7-8 days. So let us read text 6, and we're going to ask Marilyn. Yeah, you're on.
Yeah.
You read text 6.
What page?
Page 20.
20.
And again, they risk to write such a letter. They send it out of the country to Africa. Take it away.
I was asked about those conversos whose hearts are directed towards heaven and who strive to observe the mitzvot to the best of their ability. How can they eat during Passover in a way that avoids violating the severe prohibition of chametz? For them, refraining from all foods typically avoided by Jews on Passover is not practical. Even if they limit themselves to eating rice and similar foods, they fear being accused by Christians of maintaining their ancestral customs, as rice is commonly prepared in every Spanish Jewish home during Passover. This fear weighs heavily on them. Some of these distressed and anguished individuals have asked whether there are grain-based foods that Jews traditionally avoid on Passover that could be permitted in their unique circumstances.
So these are dire circumstances without a question. Obviously, you know, what parallels, as you see in the question that follows, and distinctions can be drawn between this case and the prayer scenario? Well, there's no life and death in the prayer scenario. They can pray outside. So there's another option here. It's like you got to be really careful what you do. Their life can be on stake. The family's lives can be on stake. So, again, in the back of the book, you can see a little bit of how Rabbi Duran answers them. And what we're highlighting right now, again, maybe we'll have a little more time a little later, is just the questions. Wow, these people have such difficult lives. But they say, we want to do at least a bit of Passover. I think this is actually very meaningful to a lot of us, because some of us may not see ourselves as doing a full Passover or full, but do part of it. And that is significant. And these people, even under such dire circumstances, were ready to do so. Our third question is something I've read before with you. Some of you, actually.
Can we do one of the answers? Just one of them?
God willing, we will have time. We will do it. But do not worry. It's right in front of you in English.
Yeah,
So you can,
okay.
we will try to do one. I want to make sure we fulfill everything else we need to do in this time. Okay. The story of the Holocaust. I'm not even going to give you an introduction. Everyone knows about the Holocaust and everyone knows about capos. So this story was the day before Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year's. And you can imagine, of course, the Nazis knew about the Jewish calendar and specifically made a great killing of Jews on Rosh Hashanah. The day before Rosh Hashanah, a father who has a son in the camp turns to a rabbi who is also in the camp with him. The rabbi, Rabbi Meisels. Rabbi Reuben, did you ever hear of him before? Vitziner Rav? Okay, Rabbi Reuben says he has. Again, he's from Hungary, so as you know, most Hungarian Jews ended up in the camps in 1944. He's with them there. And here comes the question. I'm going to read this. I'll let other people read parts of this. Michelle, I want you to be able to read, so I'm going to give you the next reading. So be ready. Okay? You're going to be able to read from the screen, Michelle, because
I don't have my book.
I'm aware of that, but if you flip your page, you'll see the screen that I'm sharing. I'm sharing the text, okay? Here it goes. I'm going to read the first part. I was approached by an Hungarian Jew, says the rabbi, who said the following. Rabbi, my only son, more precious than the pupil of my eye, is there among those condemned to the crematorium. I have the means to ransom him. He may have had some extra bread or some type of food. I don't know. But since we know that the capos will take another in his place, so there's this whole group of young men that are going to the crematorium. They're under 18. They need to be, it was actually 1,400 boys. They're going to be killed on Rosh Hashanah. So he says, I can go to the capos and I can bribe them to give me my son back, but they will take another in his place. I asked the rabbi to rule per the Torah whether I may ransom him. This itself is crazy. Whatever your ruling is, I will obey it, says the man. When I heard this, I shuddered, says the rabbi, at the thought of ruling such a matter of life and death. I said, my beloved child, how can I determine the answer in such a great matter under these conditions? He was also in the camp. Here I am in Auschwitz without any halachic books, no other rabbis with whom to consult, without the necessary clarity of mind because of the dreadful circumstances. He says, I can't answer this. Text 7b, we'll read Michelle in a moment, but text, let's look at page 23 for a second, exercise 1.2. If you would have to formulate a reason to permit it, what would be your reason? And then if you had a reason to formulate a reason to forbid it, what would that be? And like to share, what would be the reason why you can't do it? I'm not asking what you would do. That's a very difficult question. You should never be in such a circumstance.
I feel like you should save, like if you can save one life, even if, right?
Good, okay, so you're saying saving life, but the capos, he knows that the capos told him, we're going to have to take someone else. So that's not even a question. Is this considered a case of self-defense when you're allowed to take matters into your own hands?
No, you can't give another life. You can't.
Okay, so
You can't.
Sarah says you can't take one life for another. And the words of the Talmud is said by the famous sage Rabbah. Rabbah says, who says my blood is better than your blood, right? It's interesting that that is a common phrase used, but it's right out of the Talmud. There's more to this discussion. There's, again, we will get to read this one. We will make sure to read to the end here. Just hearing this questioner is crazily inspirational. I know it's terrible to say that, but this is what this man could save his son. Now, maybe he'll be killed in a week from now. He doesn't know. But right now, his opportunity to save his son, and he doesn't know what to do. He turns to the Torah. That's remarkable. Most people would look at such a person and look at him as he's like an angel. You're not part of the regular human beings that just think about ourselves. He thinks of a higher calling. We're going to ask Michelle to read the next text. You
Yeah,
read
but
it.
in reality, just because it's a sore, it's forbidden, doesn't mean that the guy won't try to do it anyway.
Correct.
I mean,
Okay.
the halacha is halacha, but how it's implemented
Right. He
is
wants to know how to implement it.
very,
The man is turned to the rabbi and said, I will obey whatever you say. I want to know what the Torah has to say about this.
okay.
He's a very interested into what is the Torah's approach. You are saying that we wouldn't judge a person whatever they would do in such a dire circumstance. That is correct. Let's continue on. Michelle, you read text. Had the
Okay.
practice.
Okay. Had the practice of the wicked capos been to release a redeemed individual first and only then to take another in their place, there might have been some basis to permit the deal. After all, the capos were themselves Jews, and according to halakha, it is certainly forbidden for them to actively place another person who was not originally selected into mortal danger. According to the Torah, one must choose death rather than violate the prohibition of being an accomplice to murder. Therefore, one could have uh,
Sorry.
where oops.
Yep, here we go.
Okay, therefore, one could have argued that it is not certain why that they would replace the redeemed person with another, as they might, at the last moment, be stirred by their Jewish conscience to not commit such a grave sin. However, to my great sorrow, I learned the capos practice was to first take another youngster from the camp and only afterward release the redeemed individual. This ensured they would not look back the requisite number of individuals demanded by the SS for which the capos were held accountable.
So this is a terrible story, obviously. The rabbi is going back on how this is done. And basically the capos were worried that they wouldn't have the right amount. So before they would release someone, they would make sure to have a replacement first. And he didn't see how you could do that if you know that there's already a replacement before you even ransom your son. So let us get the last text here. We're going to allow Sam to read this. Sam is an amazing guy, and I want to say thank you for everything he does. 26 at the very end. Well, we'll give you the beginning, and then someone else will take over.
However, the men, overcome with tears, continued begging me and said, Rabbi, you must give me a definite answer. As this is a pressing question while there's still time to save my only son's life. And as I was pleading with him, my dear and beloved Jew, please, I beg you, desist from asking me this question. I cannot give you any answer without consulting sources, especially under these terrible circumstances. The father responded, Rabbi, this means that you cannot permit me to ransom my only son. So be it, I accept this judgment in love. I continued to implore the man, and I protested his conclusion. Beloved Jew, I did not say that to you. I did not say that you could not ransom your child. I cannot do it either way. Do what you wish as though you had never asked me. He continued to urge that I give him a clear answer. It seemed that it was not about to render philosophy. Really, he said with much emotion, Rabbi, I have done what the Torah has obligated me to do. I have asked a question of a rabbi. There is no other rabbi here. If you cannot tell me that I may ransom my child, it is a sign that in your mind you are not certain that halacha permits it. For if you were certain that is permitted, you would unquestionably have told me so. Your evasion is tantamount to a clear decision that I have this is to do so by Allah. All my attempts to persuade you not to place this responsibility on me and act as though I had never heard the question were completely in vain.
So this man
Yeah.
took the rabbi's hesitance as he couldn't find a way to do it, and he did not ransom his son. So far, we have seen three dire situations where Jews have risen above what we would call normal. And in difficult situations, all once in Spain, once in Algeria, right? Spain with the Passover, converso Jews, crypto Jews. We have the Jews running away about prayer in Algeria, and now, of course, this terrible story in the Holocaust. We're now going to see the opposite. And you'll see this is not a Jewish practice. This is a very interesting story. We're going to watch a video together. I don't know how much you're familiar with the reason why the Church of England was founded, but it has to do with a discussion that's based out of the Torah about levirate marriage. I'm going to explain what that means by showing you the video. The video tells you the whole story. Even if you don't get the whole video, because there's different names of Henry III and others, the point is that Jews have always asked questions out of great humility and desire of relationship with God. Here, the question will be asked, actually was incognito, by a Christian scholar who wants to get a rabbi in. The Pope is going to make a decision whether the marriage, basically in Christianity, then there was no divorce. So the only way to separate a marriage would be to have it annulled, that it was an improper marriage at the very outset. And this is going to be relevant to the Pope's decision. And this Christian doesn't tell the rabbi why he's asking this question. He says, well, I've got a question. How do you look at this verses in the Torah? And then he wants to use that to fixate a certain path. So the questioner here is trying to use it for his own sake. Okay, you're going to watch this video with me. I just want to tell you, this is very interesting. This letter, you could join me on page 28. Amongst the most peculiar entries in the corpus of Responsa literature is one tied to King Henry the Eighth's infamous Great Matter. In stark contrast to the attitude reflected in the earlier cases, this Responsa reveals a strikingly different agenda: the exploitation of halakha of Jewish law for self-serving end. So here we're going to see the opposite, and you're not going to appreciate. So this is the handwritten response of a rabbi, Rabbi Yaakov. What you're seeing in front of you on page 28 is his handwritten response. It is in the library in Britain. Okay? We're not going to read these texts. We're going to watch a video. So I want to make sure that Marilyn and Michelle, you're going to tell us if you guys can see the video that I'm going to show you in a moment. Here we go.
I see it.
I see.
Okay. Can you hear it?
So far, no. Now I do.
I'm going to make it a teeny bit lower. And I'm going to make it a full screen. It's a very interesting story. I'm going to close the lights here. About this, it's going to turn into the founding of the English Church. But they employed a rabbi. They didn't tell him why. You can imagine how much trouble this Jewish community would get into to deal with the decision that would affect the Pope.
This is a surprising tale of a political and religious upheaval that sent shockwaves across Europe in the 16th century, a saga that led to England breaking away from the Catholic Church. It is
I just realized that you guys can't see anything. You guys haven't been seeing anything the entire time?
Questions.
Okay. So I got to remove this. You're going to have to hold on for this for a second. We're going to have to, we're going to redo the screen share. Hold on tight for a second, my dear friends. You see me now? Good. We'll try that again. we're gonna go back a teeny bit so you guys get the little gist of how this works.
This is a surprising tale of a political and religious upheaval that sent shockwaves across Europe in the 16th century, a saga that led to England breaking away from the Catholic Church. It is the story of King Henry VIII of England and his infamous Great Matter. In 1530, King Henry sought to annul his marriage to his queen, Catherine of Aragon, the daughter of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. Catherine had failed to give birth to a male heir, and Henry's heart had strayed toward another woman, Anne Boleyn. Catholicism does not allow for divorce, but it permits marriage annulment, whereby the Church declares that a marriage was not valid to begin with. For a king, however, an annulment had to be sanctioned by none other than the Pope. And that is where Henry ran into a brick wall. Pope Clement VII refused to provide a marriage annulment. Why was the Pope opposed to the annulment? The answer lies in the towering figure of another European king, Charles V, known as the Holy Roman Emperor. Just 3 years prior, in 1527, Charles captured Rome, effectively turning the Pope into his puppet. Charles had no intention of allowing the Pope to annul Henry's marriage to Catherine because Charles's mother Joanna was Catherine's sister. Charles knew that his Aunt Catherine wished to remain Queen of England. Charles therefore used his immense influence over the Pope to create a formidable obstacle for Henry. Henry was undeterred. He and his advisors crafted a strategy that would pressure the Pope to grant the annulment. Their plan was to argue that Henry's marriage to Catherine was immoral and had to be annulled. Their reasoning? Catherine had previously been married to Henry's older brother, Arthur. Back in 1501, Catherine married Arthur, the heir to the English throne. Their marriage was arranged by their parents, creating a powerful alliance between Spain and England. Tragically, Arthur died just months later, and his short-lived marriage to Catherine yielded no offspring. To preserve the alliance, Catherine was subsequently married to Arthur's younger brother Henry in 1509. Their marriage required a special papal dispensation, because marrying a deceased brother's widow was rare and controversial in Catholicism. Henry's team now sought to exploit this unorthodox history to pressure the Pope into annulling the king's marriage. They did so by gathering testimonies from various scholars, claiming that marrying a brother's widow was a grave sin. It should not have been allowed to begin with. Curiously, they also hoped to approach Jewish authorities for support. The problem with consulting the Jews was that England had expelled all of its Jewish subjects some 240 years earlier, in King Edward's 1290 Edict of Expulsion. King Henry therefore dispatched a close confidant, Richard Croke, to Italy. His mission, to secure evidence from prominent Jewish scholars that marrying a brother's widow was a grave sin. The challenge with this endeavor lay in the fact that while the Torah forbids a man from marrying his brother's widow, Deuteronomy explicitly carves out an exception. If a man dies childless, it is a mitzvah for his brother to marry the widow to establish a legacy for the deceased. This is called yibum, or levirate marriage. Henry's marriage to Catherine seemed like a straightforward case of permissible yibum. Richard Croke's plan, as revealed by the letters he wrote during his mission in Italy, was to enlist rabbis who would limit the scope of the mitzvah of yibum, making it inapplicable to Henry. For instance, he sought rabbis who would rule that yibum was only a mitzvah if the husband died during the betrothal, but that yibum was forbidden if the husband died after consummating his marriage. He also sought rabbis who would testify that yibum was only permissible for Jews, but not for non-Jews. Ultimately, Henry's research project was in vain. The Pope wasn't about to change his mind. Seeing that he was unsuccessful in securing an annulment from the Vatican, he chose to break away from the Catholic Church and to establish the Church of England. On May 23, 1533, Henry's newly appointed archbishop annulled his marriage to Catherine, and Henry crowned Anne Boleyn as his new queen. For the Jewish people, this historical episode marked a rare moment in which a Gentile monarch sought guidance from Jewish wisdom.
Isn't that a fascinating story?
And things didn't work out so good for Anne Boleyn either.
That's right. The story continues further than what our conversation is, but at least you see the difference. Here are the Jews in dire circumstances, not uncomfortable situations, looking towards the Torah for guidance. You have others exploiting, ask questions to rabbis to try to gain some type of self-serving purpose. Just the contrast is huge. The contrast is huge. So what we're going to do, we'll hear from Fred in a moment. We're first going to do our key points. I know a lot of people want to get to the answers. Again, page 32, rulings and resolutions and onwards, deal with all of our questions. The converses on Passover and the story of the Holocaust. We actually read all the text to it already. So next week, what we are going to do is take a new little, today we focus more on the questions, but we're going to start to focus on what was the prep work for rabbis in order to actually address different situations. It'll be fascinating. And I'm looking forward to that next week. We are back to Tuesdays next week and onwards Tuesdays. So without further ado, we're going to have key points and then Fred's remarks. So we're looking forward to both of those. Here we go. Sorry. I'm going to actually send that also in the email. You can watch all these videos again if anybody has any thoughts about them. Okay, here we go. Key points. This will be a quick summary of everything we learned today. Again, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. I hope you guys can watch this.
Lesson 1. Dispatches of Devotion. 1. The Torah library encompasses an array of genres, each with its own rhythm and character. Among them, She'ilot Uteshuvat, Responsa, stands as a distinct and treasured category of halachic case law, offering vital insights into the deliberative process of rabbinic rulings. 2. Beyond its legal significance, Responsa literature serves as a vital lens into Jewish history. Notably, it illuminates how the Torah was the lifeblood of Jewish communities across diverse eras and settings. 3. The emergence of Responsa literature was driven by the deeply rooted Jewish desire to forge a relationship with God through meticulous mitzvah observance and the Torah's directive to seek halachic guidance in times of uncertainty. 4. A question from 18th century Algiers demonstrates the unwavering resolve of Jews to maintain the sanctity of prayer according to halacha, even in the face of adversity. 5. A 15th century inquiry regarding Passover foods reveals the courage of crypto-Jews who sought rabbinic guidance despite the immense risks, even when complete observance was not feasible. 6. A heart-wrenching question posed by a father during the Holocaust epitomizes a profound commitment to moral clarity, even amid the abyss of rampant brutality. 7. In stark contrast, a responsum tied to King Henry VIII's Great Matter showcases a misuse of halacha, where its teachings were weaponized for self-serving purposes, sharply diverging from the attitude apparent in the other cases. 8. The extraordinary stories in the Responsa literature challenge us to pause and re-examine our level of commitment, precision, and sacrifice for our value system.
Next week, again, Torah in the trenches. And without further ado, we're now going to hear, this is very exciting, from Fred, please. You're going to come up here.
You want us to go up there?
Yeah, so the video catches you. This is something I'm looking forward to with my followers, and we're excited to have you.
Thank you, Rabbi, and welcome to all who have joined us this evening. Let me see if I can mess up your computer now. Wait a minute. Before the very first thing tonight, when the rabbi introduced this course, the name of which is The Captivating Cases of Rabbinic Responsa, and they are captivating, but the rabbi suggested a new name, From the Ages to the Sages. And in fact, that's a very, very good analogy, because what this course will teach us is the history of Judaic law and how it has transferred over all of the ages, from rabbinical times, from biblical times to today, and has become the foundation of very much of our secular law that we follow, at least in westernized countries and cultures today. The course is going to take us on a long journey of the origins of Jewish and Talmudic law. The Talmudic law is the rabbi's part, and through the ages to our secular law. That's my part. Now, Jewish principles of justice and ethics and fairness and the laws of civil society are still to this day at the heart of the secular laws which we follow in our society today. So seminal are these laws and these principles that they were first given originally where? In the Ten Commandments. And then they were codified in the various 5 books of the Torah. In fact, much of our law today emanates from the 5th book of the Torah, the book of Deuteronomy, where this very principle of Jewish justice is stated at 1620, justice, justice shalt thou pursue. And this is at the heart of not only Jewish law, which relates then to Jewish responsa, but also our secular law that is followed to this very day. And in fact, to give you an example of how this original principle is still followed today, I'm going to pick on you here a little bit. Just a year ago this week, our Rabbi Reuben, we have 2 Rabbi Reubens here to this evening, addressed the New York State Senate. And as part of the invocation that he delivered, he reminded these modern lawmakers one of the commandments that was given in biblical times to Noah at the time of the great flood. And one of those commandments that the rabbi recited to our modern legislators was, all societies must be governed by just laws. There's that word again, justice, just like in Deuteronomy. Now, how do we accomplish this? Well, that's what this course is about. It's difficult. It's not perfect. It evolves. We hope that it gets more perfect as time goes on. And it includes the written laws that were given in, for example, the 10 Commandments, and the written laws that are enacted by the legislatures. This is what us lawyers call black letter law. And then it goes on to the interpretation and the application of these laws. And this is what we call common and case law, but it's also what this course is about. It's the responsa. How is the written law, whether it's written on paper or parchment or carved on a tablet, how is it interpreted and how is it applied? Well, these decisions are the common law, and it's what the title of this course is about, captivating. And the questions we've asked tonight show just how captivating they can be. There's some difficult questions. Captivating cases in rabbinic responsa. And as the rabbi pointed out, this has gone on through the ages and still is today. Now, we'll see how this common thread of ancient rabbinical decisions, or responsa, is transformed into the modern judgments of our society today. And let me just point you to a point in the textbook tonight that we haven't gotten to, but it's on, you can take a look at it on page 266, where even in the text, along the lines of what I'm describing, says, the genius of the Anglo-Saxon American common law is its readiness to proliferate needed remedies for newly evident wrongs. This adaptability is not unique to the common law, but is also seen in the ongoing development of Jewish responsa and literature throughout history. That's the theme of the course, and that's what we will see here over the next 6 or the next 5 weeks. The single most defining and guiding word throughout all of this is one word: justice. And as trial lawyers sometimes often like to say to judges or to juries, when it comes to discussing justice, anything less than full justice is injustice. So enjoy the course. Thank you.
Brad, it's always good to hear from you. I'm looking forward to hearing more. We're going to now close it up for the evening. Again, if you want to find out the answers to those questions, you have in the back of your book. We'll see you back next week. Those who are able to make it, we have services this week at 10 o'clock, not 10:30. Where my wife's brother is joining us for Shabbos. It's going to be a special Shabbos with his new baby and wife. So without further ado, have a wonderful evening. And thank you for joining.
Thank you.
That's